Hi everybody, so Thunderf00t again. Yep, it's another video about Thunderf00t, who has uploaded yet another video for me to respond to. I hope this isn't going to become a recurring trend, but sadly I think it might be. There's this very popular trend within new atheism or online antitheism, whatever the hell we're going to call it, of layman psychology, of people who have no qualifications whatsoever in the field of psychology deciding to make their own diagnoses. Good example of this would be people trying to diagnose all religious people as being mentally ill or as having psychosis, whatever. Obviously ridiculous claims that aren't backed up by any peer-reviewed psychological journals or anything like that. There's this growing trend of that, and Thunderf00t, of course, is thrown his lot in with this because he has now decided that it's up to him to decide who does not have PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder, for anyone who doesn't know. Now, the tweet Melody, one of the tweets Melody Hensley put up that Thunderf00t has taken it upon himself to respond to and to judge, is one where she said that if any ex-military started were to continue harassing her, were to continue giving her harassment, she would report it to their commanding officer. And Thunderf00t considers this to be appalling. Now we need to look at exactly what this means. Thunderf00t thinks. Thunderf00t thinks that if you've served in the military, laws don't apply to you. You should be allowed to harass people. That's basically what it boils down to. If he doesn't think that, then he's got a very funny way of expressing it. Because he's basically said that she is somehow some kind of selfish coward for saying she will report harassment she receives off of military personnel. She will report it to their commanding officers. So basically, if someone commits a crime against her, she's going to report it. And apparently that makes her a bad person in Thunderf00t's view, because he seems to think that the military, people who served in the military, should somehow therefore have some special right. They should have some special right to harass people, and we shouldn't say anything about them harassing people because, they've served in the military. Therefore, apparently, according to Thunderf00t, they've earned their right to harass people. That's basically what it boils down to. And if you're one of Thunderf00t's apologists, you can waffle on all you want to try and justify this. You can start as many paragraphs as you like with what Thunderf00t meant was blah 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 blah. You're clutching at straws, guys. That's basically what Thunderf00t said. Now, it's very clear from watching a lot of Thunderf00t's videos from over the years that he thinks that if someone's being bullied, harassed, anything like that, it's their fault. That's what he thinks. He thinks it's not the bully who's at fault for doing the bullying, it's the bullied. The person being bullied, it's their own fault. Somehow they've brought it on themselves by daring to not toe the line, for daring to be a bit different, for daring to speak out, for daring to say something that other people might not find agreeable. As far as Thunderf00t's concerned, they've brought this on themselves. And they just need to toughen up and deal with it. That's blatantly, clearly the attitude he has. That's what he thinks. Except, of course, when it's him, when he's the one who's receiving criticism or receiving ridicule. When people are photoshopping him into porn, or people are setting up fake Twitter accounts in his name. When people are setting up these doing these parodies of him online, all of a sudden it becomes a serious matter. Suddenly we've crossed the line, as he puts it. All of a sudden this needs to be taken seriously, because apparently this isn't a first world problem. Everyone else's problems are just petty little first world problems. But Thunderf00t being photoshopped into porn or having someone parody him on Twitter, apparently those are third world problems. Apparently the third world is just riddled with this kind of thing. Fuck starvation or anything like that. Those are just peanuts compared to Thunderf00t being photoshopped into porn, or Thunderf00t having been parodied on Twitter. So, like most people who believe in stupid shit, Thunderf00t is a complete hypocrite. He, likes to apply this rule to everyone else, but doesn't apply it to himself. Thunderf00t, in fact, threatened to sue, I think as I understand it, Josh Silver, who was the guy who was running the fake Twitter account in his name. He threatened to sue him And yet, so somehow that makes Thunderfoot some kind of hero. Yet here we have Melody Hensley, threatening to report someone for committing a crime, and what's being done to her is an actual crime. It's harassment. So she's threatening to report a crime. What Josh did wasn't a crime, right? It's allowed. Parodies, mocking things like that are not crimes. Setting up a parody Twitter account, as long as it's obviously a parody, which it was, it quite clearly said that this is not the real Thunderfoot, it's a joke, isn't really a crime. So, by Thunderfoot's own standards, he's one of the biggest crybabies, one of the biggest whinging, whiniest professional victims there is. And I don't feel bad calling him a professional victim, because, he does have this Patreon account set up. He does e-beg shamelessly and greedily, just to make the same shitty videos he's been making, he was making for free before. So, and a lot of his videos are all about how mean everyone's being to him. So, calling him a professional victim is perfectly apt. And this is his logic we're using here. We're holding Thunderfoot up to his own standards here. So, by his own standards, he's a professional victim and he's a dirty, great crybaby. And yeah, he's also a pseudoscientist in this sense. He's a real chemist. He understands that, but here he is practicing psychology without any qualifications. He's basically saying that Melody Hensley's PTSD isn't real. He's just taking it on himself to just throw out the diagnosis of an actual psychologist. She's been diagnosed with this, by a doctor of psychology. He's just throwing that out and saying, no, you're not really, you haven't really got PTSD because I don't think you have. That's his logic. He doesn't think that the experience she's gone through, which she's gone through, he hasn't gone through it, she's gone through it, he doesn't think it's enough to warrant PTSD, as though that's how PTSD works. As though you can only get it, you only get it if you've gone through the same thing that someone else went through when they didn't get it, or whatever. That's just really not the case. Now, if we take an even cursory glance at PTSD, now I've visited a site called ptsd.org.uk, right, which is, as the name would suggest, a website all about PTSD. Now, it actually says here, this is a site set up, I think, by the military, from what I can gather, and it says here, this is a military site. Post-traumatic stress disorder is a natural emotional reaction to a deeply shocking and disturbing experience. It is a normal reaction to an abnormal situation. For a doctor or medical professional to be able to make a diagnosis, he has strict diagnostic criteria which has to be met. He will do this by asking you a series of questions or listening to talk about an event or events in your life in which you feel significantly changed your behaviour. One recognised standard for assessing PTSD is the World Health Organization ICD-10. It was thought that PTSD could not be a result of normal events such as bereavement, business failure, interpersonal conflict, marital disharmony, working for the emergency services, etc. And most of the research on PTSD has been undertaken with people who had suffered a threat to life, e.g. combat veterans, especially from Vietnam, victims of accident, disaster and acts of violence. It is now recognised that PTSD can result from many types of shocking experience. Okay. So there's a bit more there, I will link in the description, but what that quite clearly states on a website about PTSD by people who actually know what the fuck they're talking about is that yes, it was once thought that this was something that was limited to people who'd been in combat situations or similar, but it is now recognised, as I've just read, that some quite normal situations can bring this about as well. But I'm sure they're all wrong, Thunderfoot, and you're right because you just think you're right, and that's obviously a great way to form opinions, isn't it? Just by shrugging your shoulders and taking a wild shot in the dark. That's a brilliant idea, isn't it? Now, what I should add here is that the original sufferers of PTSD, the first people to start showing symptoms of PTSD that we actually recognised anyway, was during the First World War. Now, people in the First World War, soldiers who started showing these symptoms, things like shell shock, were at the time, Thunderfoot, just deemed as being cowards. That's what they were deemed as, because people didn't know any better. People just thought, no, these guys must be cowards, they can't go back into the trenches, they must be cowards. As time went on, though, and more studies were done, it was realised these people had a recognised disorder. They had something that was wrong. There was an illness that wasn't their fault. And the people, therefore, who labelled these people suffering PTSD as cowards were completely wrong. They were completely wrong, and they were obviously insultingly wrong. Just as you are now. Do you not get this? You're now doing exactly what was done originally. You're just writing someone's illness off because you don't fucking understand it. Now, Thunderf00t, we have a word which I'm sure you're familiar with for people who think that when someone's being bullied, when we think, oh, it's not the fault of the bully, we think it's the fault of the person being bullied, we think it's the fault of the victim. We have a word for that kind of attitude, and it's called social Darwinism. Well, 2 words actually, isn't it? Yeah. Mathematics is obviously not my strong point. So, yeah, Thunderf00t, you are a social Darwinist. It's clear as day. That's what you think. You think these people are just weak and should just be left to just die off, basically. The Amazing Atheist is the same. If you've ever watched his video on bullying, he just seems to think bullying victims are complete pussies. And interestingly enough as well, Thunderf00t, in your video you make the appalling and utterly ridiculous comparison between Melody Hensley and the Westboro Baptist Church, which, I mean, where you go for a low shot, where you go for a complete cheap shot. It's like, oh, yeah, Westboro Baptist Church disagrees with the military. Westboro Baptist Church. That's amazing connection you've made there. So anyone who criticises anyone in the military is automatically tarred with the same brush as the Westboro Baptist Church. I mean, how fucking stupid can you get? Now, can I tell you something that did remind me of the Westboro Baptist Church? When your buddy, the Amazing Atheist, was holding a sign up mocking Amanda Todd when she committed suicide. Him putting this, holding up a sign, making fun of her, making fun of a dead child. That very much reminded me of the Westboro Baptist Church. That's someone with a sign, you know, interfering with the bereavement of someone's loved one, someone who's died, interfering with their mourning, you know, making fun of it, interfering, expressing an opinion you were never asked for on something, instead of leaving be, instead of letting people mourn in peace. You know, whether you like them or you didn't like them, let them mourn in peace. Whatever your thoughts about the circumstances surrounding their death, it's a good policy, isn't it, just to leave them be. That really did remind me of the Westboro Baptist Church. You know, someone holding up a sign, making appalling comments about someone's death. That's just something to bear in mind, Thunderf00t, because you, although once on the Magic Sandwich Show you did say The Amazing Atheist isn't your sort of thing, you have since gone on, and, you know, who'd have thought you'd be inconsistent, you have gone on to not only recommend him as some kind of leader for atheism, as if such a fucking thing could exist, and you do seem to delight in sharing his garbage on Twitter, as well as a lot of other nonsense, including some quite racist nonsense I've noticed of late. So yeah, I think I've dismantled this pretty aptly. I mean, you aren't even trying anymore, let's be honest. You know, you're not even trying to disguise your misogyny and your social Darwinism as actually something reasonable anymore. So like I said in my last video, keep going. Keep on trucking.